Hey everyone, my name is James and welcome back to ChippyGaming. So amongst the celebrations for the 10-year anniversary of Terraria, the developers of the game hosted their own AMA over on the Terraria subreddit. Now, you would assume after 10 years, players have probably asked every good question under the sun, but it turns out that's not actually true at all. Yesterday's AMA had so much interesting information, mainly regarding, scrapped ideas, unimplemented items, the future of Relogic, really great stuff. So I went through this morning and I gathered together all of the answers, which I think you lot should probably hear. I highly recommend clicking the link in the description, going to the AMA yourself and reading all of the little details. But these are the big ones, which I think you lot are going to love. So, without further ado, let's talk about this AMA. Oh no, wait, I should probably say this now. If you liked today's video, give it a big fat thumbs up. And if you are new around here, maybe consider subscribing to ChippyGaming. Alright, now we're getting into the AMA. So for the first question, are there any major elements or ideas you wanted to add or include but weren't able to, either due to the engine, time, or other reasons? So this was answered by Red himself. At one point, I really wanted to add pistons to the game to allow players to create moving builds, but it was going to end up requiring too much work due to the engine. So next up, was 1.3.6 always meant to be 1.4? Or did the update just get bigger? So this was answered by Eraser, and he said, it kept growing. We originally only meant for it to be a relatively quick update. And that makes sense. They really did market it at the start. Is this like quick update that's coming out to like rebalance the game? But it grew into, honestly, something amazing. Someone asked if you could implement another crossover into Terraria, what franchise would you choose? Senex responded, if I had to pick just one, I would love to do something with Don't Starve together. That would be really cool. I love their art style. I would love to see how that would work with Terraria. And then Eraser said, I'm a big fan of the Neptunia franchise and would love to see the CPUs and candidates spelunking underground. Someone asked, do you guys have any kind of headquarters or do you just work from home? So Jim responded, we're working from home, but we'll occasionally meet up for a gathering. But being spread across the globe, we're working from the comforts of our homes and discussing and sharing across online platforms like Slack. Think of it like a Discord for companies. And that is exactly what it is. It's basically just a Discord. Next up, did the developers ever expect Terraria to be this big or have this large of a community? Jim responded, it just keeps growing. And then SafeMander also said, I'm not sure they ever really expected it to, but in my opinion, the incredible community and continued success of Terraria are directly related to the passion and dedication of the developers. And I believe this as well. And what's interesting is that even though 1.4 is now out into the world, we've had all the little micro updates that follow it, I really don't think Terraria stops here in terms of growth. I feel like every single day new people are finding the community, and I can tell because the YouTube channel keeps getting larger and larger, and you would expect by now that the growth would have slowed down completely, but it really isn't the case. I feel like the better Terraria gets, the longer its legacy will continue onwards. Someone asked, why don't silver bullets have bonus damage against werewolves like the state launcher does to vampires? Red responded, this is a great question. Now you know if 1.5 ever gets made, this will pop up. This is like the perfect thing that always works its way into an update. I've seen questions like this in the past and then they work into a larger update and it's all relevant to some random Reddit post. It always makes me laugh, this kind of question. Someone asked, is there going to be new custom seeds from time to time? So this is something that, fingers crossed, I was really hoping for. Senex responded, it is definitely a possibility. Someone asked, is this the actual final update or you're just doing whatever you're doing with Terraria? So Red responded, it is probably the final update, maybe. This one's a great question. If each member of the team had the time to add one major class to the game, what would it be? So Lejour responded, a ninja class, centered around dashing abilities and throwing weapons. High mobility, more risky, ranged class type, which I think sounds awesome. Eurazer responded, a risk-taker class with access to extremely powerful gameplay-changing items that have more major detriments. Jim responded, a very particular assassin-style class that's mostly about speed and mobility. Someone asked, what was the hardest sprite to make? So Chrono responded, Moonlord was one of the hardest and most time-consuming sprites I did for Terraria, and I still think it could have been better. The sprites I designed for the DD2 event, such as the Ogre, Betsy, and Summoner, were very challenging as well, since they had to be accurate to their original concept, but still look like Terraria sprites. Quick note here, Chrono, I think you nailed it. That event looks so good. Jim responded, that's too hard for me to say, nothing jumps out at me, but smaller things can often be extra challenging to make sure it conveys well what it is supposed to be with an extra few pixels. Next up, what was the inspiration/idea for the golfer NPC? Out of all of them, he seems so out of place in my opinion. So Red responded, I have been playing a lot of Golf Story and thought it would be fun to add the golf mechanic to the game. The golfer NPC is loosely inspired by Tiger Woods, as we needed someone to sell golf stuff. So someone asked, I'm curious to know, how did you come up with the design for Moonlord? So Chrono responded, the Moonlord began as a concept to replace an old idea called Moonboss. We went through multiple iterations based on different themes, but overall it was inspired by insects and sea life, aside from a certain great one. The final design chosen was an amalgamation of a couple different ideas from previously scrapped designs. Part of the design process was to include elements of previous bosses, such as the eye and the brain of Cthulhu. Next up, why is the ninja inside of King Slime? Red responded, the ninja lost the fight and was consumed by King Slime as a result of his failure. And then LeJure brings it back around. Maybe this is why we don't have a ninja class. Someone asked, do any of you have a favorite mod? Eurazer responded, I don't suppose Tmod Loader itself counts, but I'd say Blushy Magic's Magic Storage. Magic Storage is honestly so useful. It's hard to go back to a chess system once you've played with that mod. Someone asked, what was the hardest choice during development? Loki responded, whether or not to add loot boxes, which we did, in the form of fishing crates. This makes me laugh because I always talk about this. Crates are like playing the Terraria lottery. That's what I always say in my Let's Plays. Next up, what was the void pull supposed to be in the options, and why did you remove it? So Eurazer responded, if I recall right, the void pull was an early attempt at the void vault and the void back. Once we figured out how we wanted things to work, we started from scratch to do it cleanly. Next up, for anyone on the team, what's your favorite idea for Terraria that never made it into the game? So Chrono responded, many of the new biome ideas we had, like alternate versions of existing biomes, biome expansions, and so on. We had concepts for things like that, but there was always a lot of things to reconsider, so many of it went unused and unfinished. Next up, what's the plan for the future for the Relogic team? So Senex responded, we are currently working on a few different things to improve the team overall. The programmers are currently working on learning and expanding their skills with Unity, and the art team has been working together on new art styles and art consistency. Once we are done with these little projects, we will move on to making a few quick game jams, and after that, who knows? Someone asked, if you were evil enough to make one change to Terraria to piss everyone off, what would you do? Rep responded, I already did it. The Torch God. Yeah, looking back, I feel like the community might have reacted a bit harshly to that, but hey, I quite like the Torch God, and I really love the item it gives you, so I'm strangely happy that that all happened, to be completely honest. Next up, what made you come up with the idea of making the amazing game known as Terraria? Red responded, I wanted a game that I could play with friends. I took elements from many other games that I enjoyed like Castlevania, Minecraft, Metroid, Zelda, Dwarf Fortress, and Lyro, which I think is how that's pronounced. Got a question for you lot at home though. Out of all of those games, which one is your favorite? Because for me, out of all of them, I've got to say Zelda, even though Minecraft is still a bop. Someone asked, how did you guys first manage to come across your composer? So Senex responded and said, Red was looking for musicians on a game developer forum and saw that Scott had posted he was available for work. Rest is history. Now, that has to be the luckiest find anybody has ever found when it comes to game development. Because seriously, the Terraria soundtrack is so good. Like, it's iconic at this point. Next up, somebody asked, what was an item you got really close to putting in the game, but didn't, and why? So, Eraser responded, the first fractal. It was one of Final Sword iterations that felt almost complete, but ended up not feeling satisfying enough, so we took another go and ended up with the Zenith instead. Now, having tried the first fractal, I've got to say, it's really good. I do wish that both of them could live simultaneously. You could make one or the other. But if you've never heard of the first fractal and actually want to see what it looks like in-game, I've got a video about that. I'll leave it linked at the end of today's video, or you can find it in the description. So next up, this question actually links back into the biomes we spoke about earlier. He said, what were you guys planning for the swamp, hell, and candy biomes? So Red responded, the swamp was intended to be an alternate to the jungle. The initial design was done prior to us adding a lot of new content to the jungle, and it ended up being too large of an alternative to do. So I want to assume this was probably around 1.2 times, since that's when the jungle got its big overhaul. He then said the candy biome was going to be an alternative to the hallowed. Had this happened, it would be similar to how the Crimson and the Corruption work when you only get one. That would have been amazing. I'm sorry, like, out of all the things we looked at today, that is the one thing I do wish actually made it into the game. A candy biome sounds great. It sounds like a good alternative to the hallowed. It really does. So, the final question for today, I thought this one was just interesting. Somebody asked, what's your guys' favorite class to play as? And Red responded, ranged. That's pretty interesting. Mine personally is magic. Another question for you lot at home. What is your favorite class in Terraria? Right, so that wraps up the AMA. Lots of juicy information. I'm really excited to see where Relogic go next. Also, them just teasing that they're not really done with Terraria is just great to see. I mean, clearly, they don't want to make any more right now. But the fact that they're not just, you know, shutting it down completely forever, it just shows that the passion will always be there. And I think that's great to see. Right, so that's it for today's video. Guys, if you enjoyed it, give it a big fat thumbs up. And like I said earlier, if you are new around here, consider subscribing to ChippyGaming. Right, see you in the next one, guys. Peace.